All right, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's 2:01. And
Is everybody
moment for that to pass on minutes.
I do.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Al?
Yes.
Want to conduct a meeting? Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Yes, there is.
You?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second? What a lively group this is.
Yes.
Okay, is there any discussion of corrections, amendments? Oh, yeah.
I read it this morning, so.
Rick, I was told that no one's going to say anything because they're hoping this meeting goes by very rapidly.
Oh, yeah? Okay, all in favor of the approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no? Any abstentions? Okay. I think that all that happened is we rolled over the I think that we just rolled over from last month. Is that right, Andrea?
Yes.
And I think that the only thing that we really need to work on today is that a week from today is going to be the initial visioning session for the campus, and then in the evening for the Board of Trustees. So if we can talk about the process itself and what will occur on PBWS and ACL Martin, who will be facilitating all those conversations.
Will do.
Okay.
Okay. I'm passing out one thing, and I have two other things, but we'll do them one at a time. The first thing is a draft outline of the session for us to review here. Get everybody on the same page, get your input, and so the purpose of this, obviously, as we had discussed the last meeting, was to engage people on campus envisioning for the master plan. And we will be participating, PBWS will be participating, and also members of this committee, I am trusting, will help us participate, and I will address that in a bit. It's going to be, we have a location, and it's going to be next Wednesday from 9 until 3 p.m. So it'll go all day long.
And then roll right into the meeting.
Yeah.
Yes, we did that so that we would be freed up by the time that occurred.
Just so everybody knows, the board next week is not having a full board meeting. It's a study session. And the sole two topics of the study session is the facilities master plan and sustainability.
Great.
And that meeting will start at 6. And then we're working with them to see if they want to do any kind of tour or anything ahead of that. But the goal, therefore, is to get the initial visioning of what people have in mind from, basically the entirety of the campus 1 week from today. That starts the process. Obviously, it doesn't end the process of input. Go ahead, Susan.
And so the way that it's set up, in order to get as much participation as possible, we're going to have two fairly formal presentation times. And that will be at 9 o'clock when it starts, and at noon, which is during the campus lunch hour. And we will be having a presentation. It's a slide presentation, which we're going to, I think, be able to show you, preview for you today. And that'll be a short thing. So it's actually a version of some slides that we have shown you in the past, but updated for this purpose, and then continue to update until next week when we run it. And then that'll be about a 10-15 minute presentation. And after that, we will ask people to participate by joining a discussion group, one of 5 discussion groups, which will be set up around the room where we'll be meeting. And those discussion groups will focus on 3 main issues of the master plan, and really more like 2 main issues: modernization and sustainability. The seismic retrofit of buildings is also an issue for the master plan, but we're not really asking, I don't think, for people's input on that because that's just something that's going to get done. But we're going to let people know that that is going to get done. For modernization, of course, there are many questions that could be asked about this, but the overarching framework question really has to do with, for each person who's participating, for whether it's a faculty member, staff member, student, what would be the ideal facilities over the next 40 years or so that you would want for the work that you do, either as a faculty member, as a staff member, or as a student in a program? And we will be helping people to discuss this question. What do you want to see? What do you need? What do you need that you don't have now? What have you seen at other campuses that might, be of interest, that are examples that we might look at?
Can I ask, in terms of the faculty input, because it seems like there's going to be a student learning services component.
Yeah, there's on the back of this sheet, you'll see there's a list of 5 tables.
So the question for the faculty is, in order to get the most faculty input, what is laid out here is arts, sciences, humanities, SLS, and CTE. And the first question, are those for the input of the faculty, do those make the most sense in order to have meaningful discussions in sort of pods that are around the room?
Well, immediately I figure out where would I fit in, and if some of the plans that we need to discuss about future non-credit ESL, and where do you see us fitting in there in the humanities?
I think humanities,
Okay.
probably.
Okay.
But I think that is what the discussion here is, because if you're not sure of where that is, what word can we better use that might be more helpful?
We may want to talk to Russ and Ted Young because of this international program that's starting to, I don't know.
Okay, but what word can we use to describe that conversation? Because, what we're not trying to do is to limit the discussions. We're trying to solicit the input about what this place needs to physically look like in 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So the question is, if we were to break into 5 groups, student learning service, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. And, the entire process of admissions and records and counseling and DSPS and all the various different programs, I think that's a fairly clear pod. Okay, but in terms of the faculty themselves, then there are 4 others, and the question is, are those the 4, or should there be different 4, or should there be different words describing those 4?
Yeah, I don't have the different 4 words, but I think that immediately I looked where would I go, which group would I was wondering, so maybe a little 4 different words.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard for us to think out of our current structures and so forth. And I was just thinking, we have Jennifer Cooper here from the library, but I was even wondering for Jennifer where the library would fit, and so forth. But
Says who?
Yeah, you can.
Oh,
You just can't
okay.
vote.
Okay.
You can talk all you want.
Yeah, I don't see it. I was wondering where we would fit.
Okay, well, let me ask, and let's just start with the arts. Now, we're building a center for the arts, but on the other hand, it doesn't encompass all of the arts. So the B building will be a part of that conversation. Okay, should that be a separate conversation for just the arts?
it depends on where we are. Like architecture, for example, where we
Okay,
fit.
but we're not trying to silo this discussion.
No.
So-
I just wanted to say,
Or should we just have 4 generic groups?
I think all we're just trying to figure out is where we go.
Mhm.
It's not
So-
a siloization.
Is the sense that these are too restrictive because we're trying to sort of send everybody down their own little chute? Because that's not necessarily the intention. The intention is to get like-minded or like-interested people to have a fruitful dialogue of building and brainstorming and so forth. So if each one of them is like a shotgun approach, you might not get that same dynamic.
Something I could say that could possibly make things better or worse is that because the way that this is being set up, there would be these two more formal participation periods, but it's going to be open throughout the day, so people could actually attend a discussion at more than one pod. They could drop into the pod that they think is the most appropriate for their own interests, but they may be interested in or be in more of a cross-disciplinary situation, and they would also like to talk to the people in sciences and, or talk with the people in sciences or have their input about science facilities that might relate to something that they are interested in, even if they're not necessarily from a science discipline. So they could kind of cross over the room and drop in on that. I don't know whether that makes people feel like it would be more comfortable to fit yourselves into these categories or not, but.
And then perhaps even another idea is just simply have people begin to define the ideal facility and say what it is, and then begin to listen to what all these different people are saying, and then start to put people into groups.
It seems that.
And let it be just kind of emergent so that you find like facility-minded people.
It seems that the moment you start to break it into groups, we do like Coleman says. We're going to look for where we belong. And so if we can do something across the board where it is inviting the family of the campus community,
What about a table that talks about the ideal classroom? That talks about what are the
That'd be a good idea.
technology needs, the kind of.
I like that.
What about whiteboards? What about memory whiteboard? What about seating? What about flexibility? All those kind of things that everybody could sit down at and have a say in or want to say something.
And perhaps even broader, a program, like where would you like, if you could house your program, what would you see that facility like? So not just within the classroom.
But it could be, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
because I just interrupted you, but I was going to say that probably I like the idea proposed because it could begin from the inside, from the user in the room outwards. But then I think we discover, I think it gives us a lot of flexibility to kind of put, people together who seem to have similar kind of things. And I think in the end we get what we're looking for.
Like by room types.
But I think we can continue to ask the questions, meaning you begin with the classroom, but then you ask other questions for us
For example,
to answer.
There's a notion of what a general classroom needs to have to be a modern
Right.
classroom. It's the technology, it's the this, the that.
Right.
But then you would say, okay, now I'll use this, although we have an arts building underway, it'd say, how would an arts classroom be different, and what would be the needs of that would be different than, say, just a general classroom? So you might be able to define some needs in humanities or mathematics or something else that might tweak that general classroom for that purpose. What I heard the last time we talked was that there was a lot of debate about this idea of precincts and whether you co-locate everybody together and make specialized classrooms for particular programs. And in general, that works kind of against how you have to set up the way you distribute students to classrooms, because you need all these general classrooms that can be used by any program, just because you've got to kind of fill these things up and put students in places. That's another discussion. But the idea of what the module is that you're using.
Right.
General classrooms might be a certain type that have a certain kind of characteristic, and then, okay, you add this component for the arts, you add this component for science, obviously that's different, or you add this component for math. So you get a sense of, well, here's what we generally need across the board in our classrooms to be a modern university or a modern college, and then we tweak it this way for specific programs, and some of them already may be tweaked.
So if you facilitated that initial discussion, and depending on the makeup, because there will be ongoing conversations, that could you as facilitators just say, hey, I think that we have a group that can go off and discuss that and develop it further?
Sure. Here's what I don't know about the participation. We never know until it's there. We're going to have 2 presentations, 10 to 15 minutes. That'll sort of set the stage. And we were kind of wondering whether we don't leave that up and maybe just roll it while things are going on, so that if somebody comes in late, they can just see the images. But then you break down into groups, and you don't know how long you're going to have with a group. And then they may get up, and another group comes in or wanders in. Generally what you get is 3 or 4 people an hour kind of wandering in and wanting to know what's going on, so you brief them about what you're doing, and then you sit down at a table or where they're interested in and pick it up. I kind of doubt we're going to get people who are going to stay more than an hour max, I would imagine.
I think that's a good assumption.
Yeah. So whether they would break up into a smaller, discussion group or not, matter of whether they're going to leave or what time they can do.
So could you do it on the fly, just
Well,
work it out?
I think we can. I think what we can do is, have the general discussion about what a modern classroom is. I think we should probably have a few things that we think are sort of the baseline components of that, and then have some more discussion about it, and then maybe break up into groups that want to focus on specialty type classrooms or something like that.
And I think that you can lead the discussion very clearly with some of those components in the questionnaire. And I think that leaving open the customization aspect, meaning
Yeah.
when I'm talking about customization, I'm talking about towards a specific program.
Right.
So say for architecture, if it was, a drafting room, for example, that would be the customization aspect. So, but I think that instead of I think that just leaving open, leaving that part for people to fill in, the customization component, and that way, as a further development, this is the modern classroom, does this meet your needs? And if this does not meet the needs of this particular area, then what additional components, so that we can begin to define?
Well, maybe what we'll do, which we don't have now in the show, is to put in, we've got all kinds of classroom components that we've designed over the years that would probably make up this basic classroom design. We can pull some of those together and say, here's the technology package that we think is the latest. Obviously all that's changing, but there's been a lot of studies about the flexibility of the furniture in the room and having it be able to be relocated for different kind of classroom needs. There's the issue of the whiteboards and memory boards and all that sort of thing. There's distance learning and all those kind of components that would be that. We can put that into the slideshow, so we'll have a little preface for everybody to see, and then when you break down to that table, we can start the dialogue about, well, those are kind of the basic components. What are the other elements that might be needed for a general or standard classroom, vis-a-vis maybe then special programs that are add-ons to that? And it could be very well a modular kind of system that you come up with, and then at the end of the day, we would be able to say, okay, we need X number of high-tech classrooms of a general nature in C building, and we need some specialized classrooms that we're going to put into D building that will have these added components to it, stuff like that, and that'll help with the cost estimate and everything else as well. So that's a good, I think maybe that's a good idea.
There's one other thing that I just wanted to bring up, because I wasn't here last week and so forth, but there's a component to this, which is, we've talked about the ideal facility, which I think is really an important factor in this, but also just a general sort of idea of what would be the ideal campus of the future. What would it be? And I'm talking about something that Otis mentioned actually the very first time we met, which is that 50,000 foot vision of the big idea, really, of what it is. And what I'm saying is just simply, what would be, what would it be? It's like a state of being that you're trying to define, not something specific. I'm not saying that it needs to, I don't want it to become a stylistic discussion. I want it to be, what are the kinds of things that you would want this campus to offer you as an experience? What would a student feel when they come on this campus? What is it that we want with that, for that big vision?
So if you're thinking about a 50,000 foot sort of view of everything, would the different groups be, and I like the term you use, sort of from the inside out, right?
Right.
Is there a group that's talking about programmatic issues of the classroom and the fundamental building block, of a facility, if it's the classroom? Another one that is sort of talking about the image or the exterior, not a stylistic discussion,
Right,
but what do we want to say
Experience.
about the arts piece or the humanities piece or this? And then yet a third one that's all about the site. Is it sort of an interior, exterior, and site kind of a discussion, and incorporate the various, art, science, humanities into each one of those?
Right.
Just a question.
Yeah, well, I guess my answer, I would think about the vision that, say, for example, that we've sort of been establishing for ourselves as the global community college for the 21st century, is it? And so forth. But what does that, how would we kind of begin to envision that as a campus?
Well,
Well,
one of the
maybe-
questions I've got, Richard, is from your vantage point in designing campuses and being part of the college and university planners and so forth, what is a campus going to look like in 20 years? Because ultimately, I think that this shouldn't just be an inbred discussion.
No, and it's a dialogue that's going on all around the country, and one of the kind of common places where it occurs is at STUP, where that dialogue goes on in various, components. Community colleges or four-year university research or four-year or research universities. What are each of those types going to be? And they talk about various kinds of trends in each of those categories as to what's changing. Technology probably being the biggest one, libraries being probably a second one, and that's also technology related. We could pull some of that together. I'm just thinking that maybe that there is a broad sort of table that steps back and says, and that means we might add some stuff to the show to sort of talk about some of those trends that are going on, and then say at that table,
Ways that these problems have been addressed before, or if they haven't been addressed, what are the questions that we need to be focused on to solving these problems?
Another issue that is certainly part of the dialogue at the level of what is the best campus and what are the best practices is about sustainability, which is one of the focuses of the master plan. And it's possible that what I see evolving here is that these 5 tables, or however many there end up being, really are looking like they're more like issue tables. They're tables about specific questions, not about a discipline. And sustainability could be one of those, and people may well be very interested in that more than in what the classroom is like, or in addition to what the classroom would
and
be
there
like.
will be people like that.
I have a question.
I originally thought that some of the tables were going to be focused on the modernization areas that we have here, the U building, R building, W building, systems, accessibility, landscape, hardscape, public art, as the main areas we were going with. So it was a little different for me to see this set.
Right. Well, there'd been some sort of evolution over the course
I
since then.
think Rick was right in that if we do it by building, everybody will just focus on their own issues. And what we're trying to do is get people to think a little bit broader and outside the box as a part of this. It's a visioning session, really.
Right.
And so we want
people
to broaden their views of what it
And
is.
then we'll
that
go
is
from the
important.
general to the
To the
specific.
specific.
And I would like to see the universal design, because that's just great for everybody, especially for the disabled.
Now,
We're talking about an ideal classroom. Is there any way that we could have a certain amount of classrooms that are set up for students that are willing to pay more in tuition so that they can take classes without worrying about getting a seat in the class? In other words,
Santa Monica's working on that
Yeah.
right now.
Are they?
Yeah, it was in the news today.
It was
Very
in the
controversial.
newspaper today, and so they're looking at a $200 a unit. Basically, this is over cap. So this is This is where they're kind of going out, they're gonna offer other services to students beyond the, I mean, everybody has
So that
their first come,
guarantees your
first
place in the
served
classroom.
for the
Pay a
regular
little more.
services, but.
That's a good idea, though.
Well, it is a good idea.
But that's a visioning
Or
idea.
It's a controversial idea.
It's controversial
Yeah.
because then you have the
I
haves
say
and
it's a
the
good
have-nots.
idea, and then there are a lot of people who would say it wasn't.
But see, this is an idea that could come out in the visioning. I mean, this is the sort of thing that I would be expecting to hear as I'm sitting at the table, recording what people are saying and discussing what people are saying. Ideas like that, or
Let me, one of the things we wanted to sort of introduce, and we've got a few slides in here to sort of, one of the components that of the master plan is the Innovation Center. And we thought we needed to describe a little bit about what that was. And in some ways, it would take the ideal classroom and it would be full of those, together with other kinds of spaces that would make it easy for innovative teaching to go on, whatever those pedagogies are. And that might be, I had thought maybe at one point we might have a table for that discussion, because it, in a way, if that is something that is successful and is accomplished, would set the tone in a lot of ways for all of the other things that we're talking about on the campus. It's the kind of signature building of that innovative approach, the global campus for the 21st century kind of thing. It would be good to sort of get some input on what.
So
that
create a
might be.
framework for the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a table, and then you create a framework for that discussion around the Innovation Center as, I think something that might have larger impacts or influences on other things like the ideal classroom or what the larger vision for the campus is.
Another sort of committee that's running parallel to this committee on the campus is one on technology, where we are trying to define the quote, the new smart classroom. So I think if it was even within that sort of general the way of defining the ideal classroom, so to speak, but the ideal smart room, if that was a kind of even a component of it, that would be useful to that committee as well. Because we are going to be spending several $1 million on doing this this year. And so if we could get something that would be valuable out of this, Rick, we could get a 2-for-1 with this.
Hopefully everything will be valuable.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, but I mean, it could be a direct.
No, I understand what
We
you
could
mean. I'm just
see it,
being-
people
just
could
being-
feel their participation and.
it would be good if the people who are on that committee could be encouraged to come to the March 21st event. So it looks like we have been identifying a series of questions that each of these tables would collect the opinions about. Is that what people are hearing? It sounds like for the last 20 minutes we've been discussing a series of questions that these tables would collect people's views about these questions. And maybe these questions need to be sort of narrowed down a little bit or broadened out a little bit or kind of defined a little bit more clearly, but it seems like the things that people have talked about here are the things that people are concerned with.
But also, I'm envisioning seeing something like best practices, the mega trends and the smart classrooms, sustainability. So you don't just come to a blank table and say, okay, create something. You have the experts kind of showing us this is what's happening around the world.
Right.
It's something to go from. To build
I think
from.
that's the reason why that each table would be a dedicated topic, so that people could go to the dedicated
Well, but
topic.
I think what you're saying is, and maybe we incorporate into the show, is more best practices, sort of oriented around classrooms, what's an innovation center, what are campuses that have set a vision for themselves and accomplished it and so forth. We could fold that in somehow into the slideshow. And maybe have a few boards that are representative of that at those individual tables once the lights come back on or whatever, and people can, oh, let's talk about that particular campus and what do they do about this, or I like that classroom at so-and-so college, or whatever.
Yeah, it's like,
Okay.
you know, when you go to a restaurant that has the picture of all the dishes and it's in a different language, and then you go, I want that one.
Yeah, we could
I
make
like
one of
that
those
one.
Chinese menu things with photos on it.
Now, part of the deal too is how do we, because there are no students here today, and we need student participation and we need very broad faculty participation. Because in the end, if the faculty, 15 faculty members show up, that's not nearly as useful a discussion.
Well, Rick, that's usually always the case. I mean, you don't get
I know,
that
but
big.
so the question is, the discussions and the way that it's framed has to be such that people want to come and give their views.
Offer lunch.
I think that's a smart idea.
Have
I
a
think-
raffle for an iPod. Or
Yeah,
something.
okay.
Yeah, have that, right. I
That
think
would
that-
be-
For an iPad, I think
We
that's
just did
something.
it, and our response, we increased by 100 the moment we offered it
Yeah.
for a survey.
I mean, we did that with a survey at USC, and they were jammed with responses. I mean, much higher than the normal.
And I think that if somebody takes on the responsibility of writing the blurb, that the advertising, of what the goal and of what we're going to do.
That's going to happen very quickly.
Okay.
We should put it
because-
out over our, what's that site that we have? Pulse. To let them know that there's an opportunity for a free salami sandwich or an iPad or whatever it is.
Craftsman beer.
That'll get you in trouble.
That'd be a whole other discussion. Okay, so how is it, again, from a faculty perspective, that you would advertise this? What words, what do we say that you're going to do for the faculty to come out and participate?
Vision the classroom of the modern classroom of the mid 21st century.
Well, that's one element. I think we got to also, well, one of the things that I think you have to do when you invite people is to say how important their expertise is. In other words, you're a faculty person on the ground. You teach every day, so you know these things, and we need that information. We need to share that and also share what your visions are and let us be a part of the plan somehow. Students are less interested because, even at a four-year university, they're only there 4 years. Here, they're here a couple of years.
So they're here 4 years.
Can't get classes, right?
Right.
But somehow that, it's kind of the pay compliments and invite people. If you make them feel great about themselves, then maybe they're more likely to come.
So we shouldn't get too specific.
I don't think so, because, we might list what things are going to be there for discussion tables or something like that, so they can see, if
Yeah,
it
I
doesn't
think we
appeal
should
to
be
them, they can
specific.
see one table or something that would be interested in. But, something that, really makes them feel like this is important for them to come, and it will have meaning, and
We need your expertise.
yeah.
We need your expertise. It's a visioning, it's make a difference, those kinds of statements that bring people out.
So, Andre, can you work with Susan? Would you be the one?
I guess
We've
so.
already-
Yeah, we've
put
been
together
working on
something
it.
that I forwarded to Juan, but.
So if within the next day, if we can get that
Okay.
on the campus network somehow. And of course, we're not just inviting faculty, it's for the staff. and it's for
It'll
the
be on the
students.
main page,
Yeah.
not the Pulse, because we want to make sure that everybody knows that they're welcome to come. Or
And send it
encouraged.
to everybody as well, on the committee as well. Whatever you put together, just send
Now, I
it to
can also
everybody.
do
and
a
then
full
we'll-
staff email too, right?
Right, and so we can do that. We can hit different places.
I can do that.
And maybe encourage head like Mary Ann Lawn, who's doing that,
That's what I was
the
just.
computer, the technology
Which is-
committee, as you just said.
Yeah,
Um,
but I was gonna
but
invite
IEC
everybody on the
too,
committee.
yeah, so that people who are in charge of some of these committees can target the people they know might be interested.
Yeah. as soon as we get that, we can, your message there.
So you guys are
Run
okay?
that.
With the overall framework of the meeting?
Yeah, but let me come back for a second. We talked about the three main focuses areas. That's fine in terms of modernization, sustainability, and seismic retrofit. But then, as we look at what these sort of breakout groups are, what I'm hearing is that we're changing that now to read more like, what's the ideal classroom, or however we want to phrase that. Some discussion group about the overall visioning for the campus. Some discussion group focus on what is an innovation center and what would it accomplish on the campus here. And sustainability and
Accessibility, I heard.
yeah. Now, when you say accessibility, you're referring to ADA accessibility, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Let me ask you a question, and I'm not trying to diminish accessibility in any way, shape, or form, but is this a discussion item for this larger visioning session? I mean, my take on it is, it's a given responsibility and state law that the campus be accessible. And so that's a matter of practice that we have to accomplish that. And we'll be, looking at that as a part of the master plan, but in terms of input from faculty, what would we be expecting to get from them in that regard, other than do it?
I think what Lisa might be talking about is the problem areas. So
Which are
people,
specific.
Well, then maybe, yeah.
I think that's, yeah.
so people have trouble on the campus. What
Okay.
is the trouble that you guys are having? I mean, that's a discussion.
Let me raise.
That's a good point. Maybe that's,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Let me also, well, I think that is a good thing, but let me also remind you that, and one of the things I'm hoping we have time to talk about today is, there are a series of work groups that have been
Yes.
defined for
Yes.
this committee, and we need to have meetings with each of the work groups to take up some of this information and make sure that that gets put into the master plan. It's a parallel process to the campus-wide workshop, but it's a very important one. And so I'm thinking that we would be getting some of that information from the work groups as well. But you're saying that generally people are going to have things that they need to talk about related to that.
Well, I think a lot of faculty will start asking, well, in terms of a smart classroom, is it accessible?
Accessible.
How do you hear all the time because they'll call us, how do you turn on the CCTV? Does it have CCTV? There's so many confusion to some of this equipment that they don't know how to use. I don't know if that's a training issue so much, but will it be in, say, these ride-on boards? Are they more accessible? How do they, make sure? I understand that it is law, but we don't always follow law.
No, I know, and
So-
most of the time it's money.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So you guys are reasonably clear?
Yes.
You
I
want
think
to-
we are relatively
and
clear.
I think that Jennifer had it. Are you okay?
Oh, no, I was just stepping back a minute, back because you went to another spot, but just in human nature, if we ask for help, that's how we get, so if we put out the request that we need your help, you'll find that human nature, people will want to help you. And instead of just saying, show up and come to this thing, if we say we really need your help and your expertise, I feel that is a way to start your wording on some of your requests.
Right.
And
In terms of the iPad idea, how did you guys go about doing it? Can you help?
With that,
Yeah.
Mary Ann.
Well, can you
Again,
ask Mary Ann if she can tie
Certainly.
into us?
Certainly. Now, who do you want her to communicate to?
How about Al?
Okay.
Are we offering an iPad for
Did-
some?
Well,
We use the
that's an
Kindle, a Kindle Fire.
Oh, well, that's fine.
Okay.
I don't know what the cost is different.
Well, let's do
It's
an
about 175.
An iPad?
iPad's like $500 of it.
Mhm,
That's
that's
fine.
right.
If-
Yeah, the fires are $199
For what we're
right
paying
now.
for
We
this
just
stuff.
wish you could
Some
give
sort
her
of
the
light
overall-
refreshments would be
Right.
good, too.
I think that food would be good. Is there any possibility of having some snacks, some muffins, or something there?
Tie on
So
that.
much right now.
All right, so we'll handle all that stuff.
Okay.
But you want to move on to something else, Andre?
Andre, you'll get
Well-
the
Yeah,
eye on the-
go ahead.
I do have a couple of things, and I'm aware that, we have till 3. one of the things is that we need help staffing these tables because we need like 2 people at each table, and the coverage has to come in part from this committee or from Rick's staff or from somebody. And so what I brought some sign-up sheets. Now they are set up with these original breakout groups. You can ignore those, but we really need people to participate, and I've set it up so that it's
I mean, you only need to come for an hour. Or
per
two or
hour.
something, so
You
that
know, if you
distribute it
can-
out during the day, it's not a big burden, I don't think.
if you could come, and what I've asked is that if you could sign up for one or more of these blocks, and then return it to Andrea so that you have a place on the campus, or you can email her and say, I can come on, at 10:30 or something like that, or 10 o'clock, 10 to 11, or 1 to 2, that would be fine. Because we do need your help, and guiding on what we've just been told, we need your help. So
So when we're at these tables, what are we going to do?
you will
Yeah,
be helping with the discussion,
Okay.
asking people questions, trying to
If your table,
engage
for
people.
example, is, let's say, classrooms, and somebody starts talking about transportation, you could sort
Okay,
of bring it back to
okay,
the, I mean,
okay.
it's kind of just
Facilitating.
And it also may be that, according to what people have been saying here, there may be some little side conversations that are going on at these tables. And so having 2 people per table, that would be one of us staff, and then one of you guys at each table, making sure that everyone gets a chance to say what they want to say and be heard. It's the same kind of thing if you're teaching and you see somebody who you think wants to say something, but they're don't have the courage to, or there's other people who are talking and sort of taking up the airwaves. Your job would be to say, you look like you have something to say. Could you share that, or could you tell us about that? So that there's a kind of eyes on the group kind of person is what I would be looking for in this.
And you're just after, put down the names,
Just
like in
put-
the first column under arts, that you're available.
Yeah, and it doesn't.
Or that
and-
you would come
And we'll
by,
work the
you would
rest
come
out.
by the room and be available.
That you'd be available for that hour is
So
what
the
we're
headings
asking.
across
The
the
headings
top,
don't count anymore because
Right.
that's not the topics.
Right.
We'll try to get an email
If
out
you
on this
have,
new system.
let me just say that if there's a topic that we've talked about that you're particularly interested in, of course we would try to get you at that table with that topic. So just write that in by hand. Okay. So, and then the second thing has to do with the work groups. I think that all of you know that you're in work groups, and these work groups are really important to the master plan project. We want to meet with work groups individually, so we will come out and sit down with you. But the logistics of scheduling that is always, pretty interesting. So what I have is something that will look like what we've passed out in the past. It's a list of all the work groups, and I have indicated potential meeting dates for your work group and the contact person who will be running your work group or who will be involved with your work group. And so
These are alternate dates, by the way.
these are a variety of dates that I'm hoping that Greg and Otis and Richard and I are hoping will somehow mesh with your schedule.
And what
So
we need to do too is find a way of getting this on the website so that anybody else can drop in too.
to the work group meetings.
Sure.
Mhm.
Sure,
Okay,
sure.
well, Andrea and I can definitely work on that.
Because if we publicize this, and again, like Lisa with the accessibility, okay, there are going to be other people, and it could be a student who has a certain disability who sees it and then wants to attend and talk about it. So to the extent we can broaden the participation, the plan becomes better.
Okay, so if we can get, if you could communicate with the person who's your contact, that would be, at this moment, it's either myself or Greg, just to kind of keep things from becoming totally chaotic. If you can communicate, if you are, for example, say you're in the V Building Modernization Group, that would be you, Colvin. If you would get in touch with me and say, of the dates you have, I can meet you at such and such a date or such and such a time, I will then set up a schedule for us to meet, and then that can be publicized. Andrea can work out how to publicize that through everybody, however that's going to work. Similarly, if you are in a group with Greg, you would get in touch with Greg. If you're in the U Building group, get in touch with Greg and say, when can you meet? And Greg will coordinate that. Okay?
So-
We would like to have this these meetings completed by the end of the first week in April, because this is very important input into the master plan process, which we have to get moving on. So yes, you had a question.
Oh, I was just going to go back real quick. I understand this. We want to circle, like, or talk about when it's a good time.
Just when is a good time, and if there are several times that are good for you,
Okay.
let us know the
Okay.
several times, and then we'll narrow that down to when is the right time.
And I'm going to sign up because I'm really excited to come to this. I'm a faculty, and I want to give my input.
That would be
And
good.
I want to see really cool things. And so I'm going to sign up at 12 to 1 and 1 to 2, but at 12 to 1, there's a presentation going on.
At 12, there'll be like a 10 or 15 minute presentation. That will happen, and then we'll have the groups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then that presentation, we can run that on an auto present kind of a thing, so that people can drop into the room, have a look at it, and then get themselves to a table.
My
We'll
guess
have
is
some
the
signs.
lunchtime thing, people will come
The
in,
busiest time.
More.
and, they'll
The busiest
see the
time.
show or whatever,
Yeah.
and then they'll go have lunch or something.
Yeah,
I
I
want
think
to
so.
be there when everybody's here. So.
Yeah,
you
okay,
might say,
great.
Pick a different time.
No, I want to. I like to be when everybody's here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more interesting
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you work
Al,
on
I'm
spaces?
kind of tied up. That
Okay, so the
whole,
question that Andre's got
Yeah.
is, in terms of the work groups themselves, they're more specific. So the visioning session is the general. And then from the
Go
general,
now, but what we'll add is a little bit of background information on what's the latest in technology for classrooms and sustainability and other things, so that there's a little bit of an overview before we break up. And then we'll have some images on boards and so forth at the individual tables that sort of are representative slides or something that might be of,
Right.
discussion or whatever. at the table.
ultimately,
But-
the answer is that the work groups themselves are going to provide input.
Yes.
All that input then goes to
To
Eastman
us.
Martin and to PBWS, and then they're going to come up with options for a plan.
But you have the
So is that
work
your
groups defined
question?
by building,
Yes.
but we're not supposed to be looking at them.
No.
Because we don't want to limit people to that space.
No, this is wholly separate from next Wednesday.
Okay.
These are separate meetings on different days.
So I know they're
thereafter.
different meetings, but the ultimate goal is to develop the facilities master plan.
Right.
Yes, it is.
And
But-
you have a
Wait.
very broad meeting next week,
Mhm.
but you want the work groups to work at the same pace or the same timeline, but they're about specific buildings.
Yes.
Yes,
We're-
and here's what I think we're going to be looking at with, let's say, modernization. That's D, E, C, section, and R primarily. W may or may be, depending on whether it remains or the innovation building replaces it. Within those, each of those buildings, there are fundamental things that need to be modernized. We will discover what those are. That's, some of it's going to be plumbing, electrical, maybe some flooring issues, bathrooms, and then there is the classroom component of that. And the visioning session, for feedback we get, will help understand what it is that would be an ideal classroom that we then look towards putting into the various buildings that will have those kind of classrooms in them. So we need to meet with the committee to talk about what are some of the specific issues with each of those buildings in terms of modernization. We need to also understand the programs that are in there and whether they all stay there or whether some of them shift around to other buildings. It'll be a much more specific discussion. The things that come out of the visioning session will influence what we do, but we need all this other sort of more detailed discussion to be able to move from the large scale to the master plan. Does that make sense?
It may be that
I
at
just
the
don't, I don't
visioning
understand
session
the
where
timing, how you're gonna, how we go from, don't define your space. Don't say you want C245 as your office. We don't want that. We want you to think, what would be your ideal location, or your, not even location, but your ideal space somewhere on campus.
Mhm.
But in this, we've defined it as the arts is gonna be in the V building, or possibly be in the V building. But then once you do the visioning session, you realize everybody has all these needs. Maybe it would be best if you moved them to the R building. And if that's even an option. If it's not, if the R building is defined as whatever you've defined it as, but then if you come to this visioning session, everybody's got these grand ideas, and it makes sense to put them in the R building, now all your work group work is,
No, but I think what will happen is it's going to be a two-way flow.
Yeah, and we
So
we
from the visioning session-
we can walk and chew gum at the same time. So.
no, I know. But the work groups can't necessarily start until the visioning has
Not
it.
necessarily.
Well, no, I'm sorry. Richard is absolutely correct. Think of it as, if you ever work in Photoshop, you have layers. And think of it as being two simultaneous layers that are active and that you're performing work on. There's a specific task group that has to deal with some nuts and bolts issues, because we know that there's certain things going there. It's not, I think that our visioning tasks are really big ideas. They're kind of what the feeling of the campus is going to be. What's this going to be like, or what would be or how would this ideal room work? And those are going to be they're going to be broad, big ideas and so forth. But again, the other specific work is and we'll deal with, that's where when we talk about accessibility, and we'll be identifying specific problem areas on the campus, things that need to be solved. We'll take care of all those things, but there will be two different things entirely. It's not a linear process, so to speak. It's one that communicates between itself, and as Richard said, it walks and chews gum at the same time. It's perfect.
I wasn't in any way
No,
trying to
that's
belittle
fine.
what you were saying. It's that these things need to almost go on simultaneously, because one will influence the other back and forth. And at the end of the process of the visioning and work group sessions, we will have both the broad view and input to the broad view, and we will also have the detailed information, and our job then is to kind of weave these things into a master plan that addresses the objectives and so forth.
Ride and shoot.
Better term. Well, that's sort of a Western term. Isn't it?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I always love it.
Well, you can register to vote in Texas with your gun license, but not with your student card,
and you
right?
can carry a beer at the same time.
Okay, Susan, did you have,
I think we're done.
you guys, everybody's good?
Everybody's good.
Is everybody
Yeah.
good? Does everybody know what to do when they leave here? Don't forget about us when you leave,
But
okay?
part of the deal is
If
that
you have those, give
everybody-
it to me.
Everybody in this room represents a certain constituency.
Yeah.
And whatever you can do to get your constituency to participate. And can you call Ashley Jackson or somebody and say, we really need to have students involved in
I'm
Hannah?
going to see Hannah tomorrow at the Sustainability Committee, and so I'll make the announcement then.
And as long as we're talking about sustainability committee, next Wednesday's a big part of the discussion for the Board of Trustees is going to be sustainability. So if we can have an update and where we are, and you guys are working on a draft plan?
Well, yes, we are. We're working on a master plan. However, I think that you and I know about where we're going.
Is that something even in draft form you can share with us?
Sure.
That'd be great. Give us a sense of what you're doing and what you've been thinking. Yeah. Okay.
One of the things, by the way, is hopefully by tomorrow, we'll agree with UTC Power to install a fuel cell on the campus.
Great.
So that'd be an 800 kilowatt fuel cell. And I think we'd be the first community college anywhere to do that. And that would provide a big chunk of the distributed generation required on the campus.
And we're also up for the governor's award with regard to our sustainability efforts. So.
I saw something on awards there. Was that
Yeah, that's,
application?
Yeah, Susan.
Just one last pitch in the last 30 seconds. The discussion of committees made me think of this. Every place you go from today until next Wednesday, every meeting that you attend, every class you teach, everything, make an announcement about the 21st. Okay? All your committees that you're on, all your, water cooler chats with your colleagues and everything, your staff meetings and so on. And that will help get people to the session.
Posters in the food service areas too.
Yeah,
Students travel on their stomach, so.
I can work with Andrea to come up with it. We have an image and we'll just try to make a poster for that.
Yeah, so as quickly as you guys
Big
can.
deal.
We will.
Exactly. And
Okay.
we can do it through the
All right,
Great.
anything else? Any last item for the good of the whole? Okay, it is 3 o'clock, so we're adjourned. Thank you.
I have to congratulate you, Rick. This is the only meetings I have ever been on a campus where they say they're going to be an hour, and they are an hour. That's a feat.